there, I'm Akanksha Swaroop and I have a question for you. Can India capitalize on China's zero COVID failure and become the future factory of the world? There's a long way to go, but when we dig deeper, there's a silver lining to India's hopes for becoming a manufacturing hub. After all, COVID protests have gripped several cities of China, including Beijing and Shanghai. In fact, they have spilled over to Hong Kong, with even Chinese embassies in global metropolises like London, Paris and Tokyo, as well as universities in US and Europe. While Chinese authorities are clamping down fast on these protests, people's frustrations with China's zero COVID policy have been brewing for some time now. The wave of protests are symbolized by blank A4 sheets and candlelight vigils. While most have been largely peaceful, Wuhan and Shanghai have witnessed a much more violent turn of events. People knocked over police barriers and many even clashed with security personnel. The demonstrations that began with rage over harsh zero COVID policies are now evolving into a wave of civil disobedience. The Chinese are now demanding freedom of speech, of assembly from the diktats of Xi Jinping and the Communist Party. In solidarity with China's protesters are vigils that have taken place around the globe in countries including the UK, Australia, Canada, US and even Malaysia. But let me cut to the chase and answer the most obvious question. Can tensions surrounding China's zero COVID policy present an opportunity for India to rejig supply chain models? Well, business objectives are not only impacted by China's lockdowns, but also by rising inflation, this in the wake of Russia's war with Ukraine. The recent unrest that took place at the Foxconn plant in China's Zhang is a stark example of China's zero COVID policy gone haywire. Unhappy workers clashed with the police at the premium iPhone factory. Viral videos showed people smashing surveillance cameras and windows. According to a report by news agency Reuters, over 30% of Foxconn's November production has been affected. So much so, the impact of the violence could well weigh in on Apple's shares, especially considering Apple's Zhangzhou factory is the only one making premium iPhone models, including the iPhone 14 Pro. Equally noteworthy is the fact that over 20,000 workers, mostly new recruits, have simply left. Sources quoted in the Reuters report stated that Apple was unlikely to resume full production by the end of this month. Interestingly, Foxconn is the same Taiwanese firm that, along with Vedanta, announced a $19.5 billion chip factory to build one of the first chip-making factories in India. Foxconn already has operations in Tamil Nadu since 2017. Moreover, in September, amid rising tension between Washington and Beijing, Apple revealed making iPhone 14 in India in a bid to increase its footprint in the South Asian nation. In fact, in comments shared with CNN News18, Apple states, and I quote, Apple started manufacturing iPhones in India in 2017 with iPhone SE. Today, Apple manufactures some of its most advanced iPhones in the country, including iPhone SE, iPhone 12, iPhone 13, and now iPhone 14. This only goes on to convey how much the tech giant is banking on India. So should India hope to compete with a global manufacturing giant like China? In fact, as per data released by the UN Statistics Division in 2018, China was credited for 30% of the world's manufacturing. But in 2019, as we all know, COVID struck, and even though the world has learned to live with it, China's Xi Jinping-led government is too scared to test the waters by loosening measures. That leaves the world with other top global manufacturing alternatives: Japan, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand and Singapore. Well, that's quite a host of competitive manufacturing alternatives. But speaking of which, low-cost manufacturing played a massive role in making China the second largest economy in the world by 2010. This stands out especially when compared to 1980, when China was just the 9th largest economy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led government has been pushing packages to attract investors to the country, and yet India is lagging behind. So much so, the Prime Minister's Make in India aims to do exactly that: bring global manufacturing to India. But India must further develop its infrastructure, education and workforce. The proof is in the pudding. While Apple may have moved some of its manufacturing to India, Google is betting its units on Vietnam, while Microsoft is already making gaming consoles over there. Still, Amazon is building Fire TV devices in India, but India's prospects are still not as exciting. According to a study conducted by Nomura, Vietnam, Taiwan and Thailand are still preferred to India in terms of manufacturing. And when we specifically speak of smartphones, Indian manufacturers are resource constrained, with the majority of the components being imported from China. In fact, 4/5 of the total imported components in India still come from China. But violence at Foxconn in China has presented a chance to us. The Foxconn incident shares parallels with the Xinjiang cotton boycott, which also presented a golden opportunity for India's global exports of cotton. But India is still unable to fill that gap, which is already capitalized by Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam and the Philippines. The UK's newly appointed Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has already announced that his country's golden era of relations with China is over. He has vowed to review the UK's economic ties with Beijing, so much so he referred to the country as a systemic challenge. The timing of such an announcement, that too in Sunak's first foreign policy speech, is highly significant, keeping in mind that there are renewed hopes for the free trade agreement between India and the UK. Should India not milk the moment, one that is ripe with opportunity? Boosting domestic manufacturing and deepening trade ties with global economies are two crucial factors quoted by S&P Global, which can help expedite India's economic growth. And yet, much awaits to be done for India to become a preferred destination.